Lorena, for joining me today to share your experiences. All around the world this semester, the novel coronavirus swept through and changed our lives. In January, it came on my radar. In February, we're monitoring changes. And then in March, we're canceling programs and asking our students to return home from their dream programs abroad. Some students returned immediately. Some continued their stays and returned at a later date, and some have remained abroad. And today, we're visiting with a couple of students whose study abroad experience was interrupted. And we're excited to hear their stories. But before we get into that interrupted part, let's transition back to the beginning and let's hear more detail from them about their experience abroad.
So my name's Lauren. I'm a senior at Washburn this year. I'm majoring in Spanish, and I was studying abroad in Santiago de Compostela, Spain. And I was supposed to be there from October through May.
Mm-hmm. And instead, you were there from
October to mid-March.
Right.
Yeah.
Darn it. And Renee.
Yeah, my name is Renee. I'm a senior. I study psychology, and I was at the University of Monterrey in Monterrey, Mexico. And I'm actually still here. I've continued to stay here even though the semester ended a few weeks ago.
So congratulations on choosing two amazing locations for your study abroad program. So tell me, Lauren, did you always know you wanted to study abroad?
Yeah. My aunt studied abroad in college, and she had great things to say about it. So I always knew I wanted to study abroad, and I always knew I wanted to study in Europe. And when I decided I was a Spanish major, Spain is the only obvious choice.
Very good. How about you, Renee? Did you always know you wanted to study abroad?
Honestly, not really. I mean, starting college, I didn't have the idea of studying abroad at all. It always seemed like something that was more of a academic luxury, I guess. But as about a year prior to doing the study abroad is when I really started considering the idea and started visiting the international house to get some questions answered. It seemed like a very realistic thing that anyone could really do.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So I like that phrase you use, academic luxury. I think that a lot of students have that myth in their head that, oh, that's something that I could never afford to do. That's not for everyone. That's just for specific students with, lots of money or a rich uncle. But no, it is accessible, available to everyone. So how did you get more information about your opportunities? Renee, you said you came by the International House and started visiting with us. Any other directions where you sought resources and things?
Yeah, I mean, I had sent a lot of emails to different people, got some different responses, met with some students who had studied abroad previously. And no, I mean, that was a great source of information for sure.
Yeah. How about you, Lauren? Where did you find out about Washburn Study Abroad opportunities, and how did your little journey go of getting resources and information?
I started with my Spanish professor. She talked about how the modern language department is really good about giving scholarships to Washburn students, and so I was like, yeah, maybe I'll look into it. And she led me over to talk to the director of the modern language department, and then also over to the International Programs House. And then from there, I was like, I'm definitely going.
And then how did you guys select your exact location and program for studies? You can continue, Lauren.
I knew I wanted one that had a Spanish focus,
mm-hmm.
and I wanted to study in Europe, so I picked Spain, and I think we have 2 exchange programs there. And the one in Santiago has courses for Spanish learners, and the other one was for people that already spoke Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, I had to do Santiago because I didn't speak much Spanish before I came. Yeah.
I'll narrow it down for you. Good. And Renee, how did you select your location and program?
I had been to Mexico a few times prior to my study abroad, and I mean, I fell in love with the country, the culture, the people, mm-hmm. and as far as like the programs that were offered in Mexico, I think it was just between this and what was the other one?
Guanajuato, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. But specific to my study, UDEM had a lot more courses to offer there.
Yeah, so the university you chose was mainly for academic reasons, because students go abroad for lots of different reasons. Sometimes the location bears more weight. Sometimes the academic program bears more weight. In a perfect scenario, the academic program and the location come together side by side, which it sounds like is what happened in both of your cases. So tell me, what were you excited about or nervous about before you left? Lauren?
So I was really excited about the chance to like travel and see more things. And luckily both of those things happened. I got to travel, I got to try a whole lot of new food. But I was most nervous about the language barrier because going in I didn't speak much Spanish, and I knew I wasn't going to like a Madrid or Barcelona where there would be a lot of people that also spoke English. But once I got there, everyone was so nice. My nerves were like not needed.
Yeah, everybody generally is very helpful, especially when you're trying to learn the language and you at least try to start up the conversation and use the target language to communicate in, and they sort of help fill in the blanks, and along with a little bit of sign language, you can definitely get yourself understood. And Renee, I know for you, it was kind of more of a heritage learning program. You already speak Spanish fluently, is that correct? And so it was
Right.
going...
Yeah, so I did already speak Spanish fluently prior to coming here. Although, I mean, it's gotten a lot better since I've been here for sure. So I wasn't too nervous about that or like getting used to the culture because I had been exposed to it somewhat already. What I was most nervous about was coming to Monterrey, which is a huge city. It's enormous. So that was a little nerve-wracking. So just, not wanting to like get lost or like find myself in any like dangerous situation or things like that.
Right. I'm not sure of the exact population, but Shawnee County around 200,000, Monterrey about 2 million, I think. So it's like
closer to 5
or maybe
million.
more. So on campus, you started off on campus studying in regular classes. What were your classes like? How were they different from your classes here at Washburn? Lauren?
They were different in that they're shorter and more condensed.
Okay.
My classes were set up so I had, I think, 4 hours of like a Spanish language class, then an hour of a culture class every day. So that's 5-6 hours of school, and the rest of the time is just free time, because they gave like half an hour of homework, and then you're free kind of to do whatever you want.
And was that Monday through Friday?
Yeah, Monday through Friday.
Okay.
It was every day of the week. It was the same setup. And it also like the classes were a lot more interactive and a lot less taking notes and more just like talking, which is a different school structure than I've ever had.
Mm-hmm. And yours is a language and culture program. So did they have some scheduled activities that you did to incorporate the community and culture into your classes?
Yeah. So every Wednesday they'd have some kind of activity in the afternoon that was completely optional, but it like introduced you to the history of Galicia and the history of Santiago as like a big cultural point. And I love history, so I found those really fun, but they also did like dancing, and they had like traditional Galician like garb that you could put on, which was super fun. And like one night we went out for tapas. The cultural activities were more fun than they were school.
Yeah, those are always exciting opportunities. And you learn a lot from them too. So it just doesn't feel as heavy as a classroom learning experience.
Really.
And how about you, Renee? How are your classes different in Monterrey?
They they were longer blocks of, each was about 3 hours. And you get like a little break in between. And it almost felt a little bit like high school in a sense that there was like bells that like rang to like let you know when like classes started, but like breaks in between, and like in the between the breaks, like everyone just kind of hung out together. So it was kind of nice in that sense. But so that structure was a little bit different. Just
Mhm.
to do that. There was also a lot more projects in each of my classes, which I really liked. Instead of just like doing like essays, we were doing like
Mhm.
more creative projects, I guess.
Was there a favorite phrase or new word that you learned in your language?
Um, so my favorite is probably más o menos because
Covers a
we would take
lot.
it on the end of any phrase and just be like, more or less, that's about what I mean. And professors hated it.
Uh, yeah,
They
they
were like,
probably
why
wanted to
would
hear
you
something
say
more
this?
specific from you.
Yes. They're like, do you understand? More or less, close enough.
Uh,
They did not like it, but everyone else thought it was funny.
sure. And Renee, I know your language experience is totally different, but you said you are becoming more fluent and learning more. Is there any language advantage you're getting out of your program?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like one of the most like effective ways of like trying to blend in as a local is like being able to like effectively use slang in conversation.
Ah, okay.
So I've learned a lot of slang words, and it's there's like slang words specific to like Monterrey.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked up on those like sacas, um, which literally means like take out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But here they use it as like a question like sacas, like do you understand? Is basically what they mean.
Ah.
I would ask for directions. They were like, oh, it's near this and this, like sacas, and I'd be like, what? What do you mean? But
Yeah,
yeah,
that would be strange. I mean, because it's almost like you know enough to be dangerous. You fluently speak the language, and then they throw in a word in a different context. Like, wait a minute, that means this. What?
right.
I don't get it.
Yeah, no, like I had to ask for like translation still, like what are exactly like are you saying?
Yeah. Yeah, well, language is a living thing, so it changes all the time. And even though you can speak a language, like you said, there are things that are specific to that area and new slang words that are invented. And so, yeah, even though you speak the language, there's still going to be some nuances that will be new to you. Okay. All right. So, foods. What kinds of new foods have you tried, Lauren?
Um, Paella, it's probably my favorite.
Yes.
Um, and then the Spanish tortilla is also like
Hmm.
it's just like eggs and potatoes, but so good.
Right. When you say tortilla, I think most people in the US would think of the flatbread because that is what is from Mexico, a tortilla. But a tortilla in Spain, yeah, it's more like a potato and egg omelet, very frittata like. And
Yeah.
paella, can you describe that in more detail?
Um, it's like a rice seafood dish. Um, it's very like creamy of kind of. I don't know. I had friends that had never tried it when they came over to Spain, and I had to be like, just eat it and you'll see. Um, and in Galicia, since we're on the coast, all the seafood is super fresh.
Yes. So it
So
probably has a little bit of everything in it: lobster, mussels, shrimp, and of course the saffron seasoning, which makes it kind of an orangey red and gives it that great flavor. Yeah, it's delicious. I agree.
yeah.
How about you, Renee? Any new foods you've tried? Any
um,
Monterrey specials there? Cabrita, no?
yes, yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
So a lot of tacos in general, but cabrito especially, like which is like goat. It's like
Yes.
goat kid.
Hmm.
um, it's tasty. I like it.
Yeah. It's kind of like a roast. It's a very good
Yeah.
flavor. You make tacos and all kinds of good stuff out of it.
Yeah. So that is very like Monterrey specific.
And you touched on this a little bit earlier, Renee, but how safe do you feel in your city where you're living and studying?
I honestly feel very safe. Like ever since I got here, like I've never been in a situation or a time where I felt unsafe. I know
Mhm.
that's like a common concern for people coming to Mexico is like
Mm-hmm.
safety. Um, but I've never had any kind of like experience where my safety, where I felt it was threatened.
Right. So your Monterrey is a huge city, but can you tell us where exactly your university is located and how far away you are from like the city center where all the
Right. So
action's
that
going on?
right. So that has a lot to do with it, I'm sure. I live in the municipality of San Pedro Garza Garcia, um, which is like in the southwestern part of Monterrey. Um, and this municipality is known for being like probably the nicest area of Monterrey. I think it's considered like the richest municipality in the country. So that's kind of crazy to think about.
Oh,
Um, so, I mean, I'm sure safety is not, I mean, like the neighborhoods here, the neighborhood that I live in is mostly just students and there's like cameras everywhere. So, and
mm,
there's police patrolling all the time. Um,
mhm. And
but
are you in walking distance of your university, or were you using public transportation, or how are you getting around?
no, I'm very close to my university. It's
Mhm.
about a 7-minute walk.
Okay, very good. And how about you, Lauren? Did you feel safe in the community where you were living in Galicia, Spain?
Yeah, I felt very safe. It's actually a smaller city than like Topeka is,
Mhm.
and with like people are always outside, so it's hard not to feel safe. There were a few times traveling where I was like, maybe I shouldn't be out this late, but in Santiago, I never felt at all threatened.
Yeah, it's a very much different lifestyle there. People don't spend so much time in their homes. More of your living is done outside and taking walks out in the park, at cafes. So it seems like there's always a lot more activity going on outdoors than indoors. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a nice atmosphere.
Hmm.
And so what's the weather? What was the weather like there, Lauren?
Rainy. um,
Yeah.
Galicia is known for its rain,
Yeah.
and people joked about it before I went, and I was like, it'll be fine. I broke, I think, 4 or 5 umbrellas while I was there in the 6 months I was there. It rains all the time.
From overuse, you broke them, or?
From the wind,
Okay.
sometimes like overuse. A few times, like I put it on the ground and it get like they have buckets for the umbrellas and it get like stomped on by other umbrellas.
Oh,
But
so you had to learn this whole umbrella culture while you were there.
yes, I learned there's a right way to hold the umbrella and a wrong way. It was a big deal.
Oh, pretty rainy.
Yeah.
How about you, Renee? What's the weather been like there?
It's been very hot. It is very hot here and humid, especially. Um, I mean, yeah, it, the humidity really gets to you.
Mm,
You immediately start sweating as soon as you step outside. Um, there were a few days where it was like a little bit chilly. I mean, it is like a mountainous area,
mm-hmm.
and it does get cold. Um, so some days, like the morning would start off like nice and cool, and then it would just be like really hot at like the
Mm-hmm.
afternoon. So
Wow, that sounds a lot like Topeka.
yeah,
The weather changes quite often and extreme. So have you found any cool places where you're at there in Monterrey that you didn't expect to find?
yeah. A few weeks ago, we went camping in about 40 minutes outside of Monterrey in a what they call a pueblo mágico or magic. And one day we went to go see this cave. It's called Cueva de los Murciélagos, or Bat Cave, I guess.
Yes.
Um, and it's not a natural cave. I think it was used for like mining a long time ago.
Uh,
But now there's just a lot of bats living in there, like
okay.
hundreds and thousands of them. So
Sounds
we
a
got,
bit creepy, but could be exciting, fun.
but it's crazy to see it from far away because it's huge. I mean, you see this like um, this huge like mountain thing, and then just a giant hole inside it, like
Hmm.
middle of it.
And are there certain days when the bats just come swarming out of there and for their
Yeah,
feeding times?
every evening at sunset around. So we went around that time and we got to see them as they started to come out, and it was crazy to see just how many come out of there.
Well, that definitely sounds like a unique and cool experience. How about you, Lauren?
Um, One of my last weekends there, I went with friends about 3 hours from Santiago by bus. And we went to the end of the world, and it's like the farthest west point of northern Spain. And you
Mm-hmm.
just look out and it's all ocean.
All ocean, the end of the world. Was
And it
it
was so
round? Could
cool.
you tell?
I waved over to Kansas and
Okay, that was
yeah.
you. I thought that was you. Yeah, that's definitely a cool, unique place to visit as well. Let's transition a little bit. What was your housing like there? I guess Renee, you're still there. What's the place like there? It sounds like you have some chirpy friends around. You're out
Yes.
on a patio.
Yeah, I'm sitting on my patio right now. The birds are really obnoxious. Here. It's nonstop. And you also just get people like passing by, just like yelling things, selling fruit or ice cream or elote.
Yeah.
Um, but so yeah, I live in a house. It's a 3-bedroom house. I did have a roommate, but he's not here right now. He's still in Mexico somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
Cancun. But we never had like a third roommate, so it was always just us two. Um,
Okay.
and now it's just me. But
Well, sounds like you have a great location there in the middle of the community with lots of activity going on around you and some space to sort of stretch out and be comfortable. It's good. Sounds like a good setup. How about you, Lauren? What was your housing like?
So I lived in the dorms at Santiago. So I got my own room, luckily. So I had my own room, my own bathroom, and then we shared a kitchen in the basement, as long as like laundry machines. So it was nice to have my own space. But then like if I wanted to hang out with people, I could go down into the kitchen and talk to people. But I didn't necessarily have to share a room.
Yeah, that's always a good option to have. So speaking of the people, what were the people like that you lived with there? Where were they from? What were they studying? And
So most of them were international students like I am, like
Mhm.
I was. A lot of them already spoke, most of them weren't already, like most of them were already fluent in Spanish. So I met people from France and people from Germany that were there to study. Santiago has a good law program. So they were there to study law.
Mhm.
Um, and other kids were studying like chemistry, which was way farther. They're like, oh, we're studying chemistry. And I'm like, I don't know any of that vocabulary, but very cool. But they were all very kind and like eating and food is a big cultural thing. So going down to the
Mhm.
kitchen, like you go down there to make your own food and everyone's down there talking.
Yeah.
So
So it
they
just
were,
kind of happened organically. Everyone just
yeah,
met in the kitchen. That's always the best room of the house.
yeah.
And so was it specifically an international dorm where there were only international students, or were you also able to connect with actual, Spanish students that were studying there?
I could also connect with Spanish students. Most people in like the dorms, most people don't live in dorms in Santiago, which I didn't know before going. Most
Mm,
people get houses with friends.
okay.
Um, so the people that were in the dorms were people from like farther south in Spain or that just didn't want to live with their families or with friends.
Hmm.
Um, but it gave a good mix of people and a good mix of like ages of people that were living there.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you got the opportunity then to mix and mingle with lots of different people. And Renee, you're in a house, so yours experience is a little bit different there. What's your roommate like, and then what kind of opportunities did you have to meet other people?
so I had a roommate. He's an Italian student. He studies architecture.
Hmm.
Um, and I honestly felt very like lucky that I got him because we got along really well. Like he's great. The neighborhood that I live in is mostly students,
Okay.
mostly international students or study abroad students, but there are other like Mexican students that live here.
Hmm.
A lot of the houses are rented out to students specifically. It was nice.
So at the local grocery store, you're running into other students and things, and
Yeah. So there's like a supermarket really close by that you would always see like a
mm-hmm,
international student there. Whenever there was like parties, it was always just like down the street.
mm-hmm.
Really nice.
House parties, nice.
Yeah,
Good way to meet other people.
for sure.
So speaking of people, how are you keeping in touch with the people here, your friends before you left, and your family and other people while you're abroad, or were abroad? Let's start with Lauren.
Um, so keeping up with friends and family here was pretty easy. The time difference made it a little bit difficult because I'd get out of class and they were already at work. So
Yeah,
I'd either have to stay up late or they'd have to get up super early.
yeah.
um,
So you have to want to talk to one another. Yeah,
yeah, you have to really want
kind of
to,
schedule it a little bit.
yeah. But it was pretty easy. I would FaceTime people. A lot of my friends, I was like, I don't have like my phone number, but I got WhatsApp. And so that kind of
Mm-hmm.
any kind of issues we might have had.
And how about you, Renee? How are you staying connected?
Um, Typically through FaceTime. I mean, I have a close friend. She lives in Florida, and I talk to her almost every day through
Mm-hmm.
FaceTime.
Yeah,
Um,
makes it so easy. All of the different apps
yes.
and iPhones and yeah.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, I'm very grateful that we have like such easy access to the internet during like, well, not only studying abroad, but just during like this whole pandemic, like that
Yes.
really is. We're truly blessed for that, for sure.
Yeah, so that's a great segue. We'll just go ahead and transition right into it. What was your novel coronavirus experience like? I mean, how did it get on your radar? What did you see? What did you feel like when it was happening? For you, Renee.
Um, Right. So it seemed like it all kind of just escalated so quickly because, yeah, I mean, everyone was hearing about it and, like making jokes about it. And no one thought like we would be affected by it as much as
Mm-hmm.
we were. Um, and like, yeah, within a week, like everyone was here, everyone was having a great time. And then people just started having to plan to go home. And it was really sad to see just, um, you know, the fact that programs were going to be cut short, people were going to have to go home, and just all the anxiety surrounding all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was literally like within a week that things changed so drastically. Um, there were quite a bit of people that at the beginning were still like, I'm going to stay, like it'll be fine. And then they just drastically dropped in numbers from there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Lauren, what was your COVID-19 experience? What did you see? What did it feel like for you? What was the sort of timeline?
So because my program was for Spanish learners, I had a lot of people in my classes that were from China. So from the very beginning, they were bringing it up as, "Hey, is this a problem?" And their culture is a lot more, I don't know, accepting of wearing masks. So they were like asking,
Mm-hmm.
"Where can we buy masks? What do we need to do?" And professors were like, "Don't worry about it. It'll be fine."
Mm-hmm.
Throughout February, they're like, "It'll be okay." Um, and then about mid-February, Spain started exploding. Um, the Italian students were sent home, and then Spain started like worrying. We were worrying about Spain, but the professors were like, "It's not in Galicia. It's just in Madrid. Don't worry about it. I wouldn't travel to Madrid, but we'll be fine." And then probably the first week of March, professors were like, "We should probably talk about it."
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there was the first case of Santiago, I think, the week before President Trump announced his travel ban.
Mm-hmm.
The next day, I was told I should come home, and that was a Thursday that I was told I should come home in the next week. And then the day after Friday, the university announced that they were going to go online. They were hoping to go back to class in after Easter, like after the Easter
Mm-hmm.
holiday,
Yeah.
but Spain has just started reopening like this month. So,
Yes.
and most of the kids that were in the program ended up going home. The only people that stayed were some of the Chinese students purely because of visa issues. But they wanted to return home because Spain locked down really hard.
So, Renee, what was the hardest adjustment that you had to make when the pandemic happened? What was one big major decision or thing you had to change that affected you? Or maybe
Um,
there was more than one.
yeah. Right. So just the conversation of like what was going to happen and what was everyone else going to do. And obviously I had to think about like my own personal situation. And I mean, as far like the numbers here never got to anything too crazy. Although here in San Pedro, where I live, like there was one of like the first cases in the state of Leon. Um, but the country in general has done a pretty good job. Like people do have to absolutely follow the rules here,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone does wear masks and follows like sanitary procedures. Like everyone,
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a choice, basically.
Right. So they're not. It's not really recommended. This is how you're going to do it.
Basically, yeah. So, um, so there was that, and just deciding what was like best for my situation, and um, going
Mm-hmm.
from there. And you know,
And so you chose to stay and shelter in place. Your classes moved online, so you basically just stopped going to the campus and continued taking your classes online. And was that a difficult pivot to make?
right. So it was um, a drastic change from just like being able to like get out of the house every day, be on campus most of the day. Um, and I mean, it's such a nice campus that I loved being there.
Mm,
And then going from that to like just being stuck at home really was tough.
right.
But
Definitely not the experience you signed up for.
right,
And part of the study abroad is being abroad and experiencing that campus every day and the opportunities to have those serendipitous meetings with other people and places through being out and about, and all of a sudden you are on lockdown, everything online.
right. So yeah, so it was a little bit sad. Just there was so many other things that I still wanted to see in the city, and I really
Mhm.
didn't see very much, if anything. So
Yeah.
it was, yeah.
And Lauren, how about you? What was the hardest adjustments that you had to make when the pandemic happened?
So since I came home, that was obviously the biggest adjustment.
Right.
Um, I like at least I got like one last day in person where I got to like tell everyone goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
But then I had to come home and my entire family was stuck inside the house. We couldn't leave for 14 days just in
Mm-hmm.
case I came up with anything after traveling here.
Mm-hmm.
And then by that point, Kansas was in a stay-at-home order. So it was really hard not being able to see my family after being away for 6 months. And then I'm back in the States, but I still have to be like, we can't see each other for health reasons.
Right.
And so that was probably the hardest thing, was having to tell them, you aren't allowed to see me.
So you got doubly quarantined.
Yeah.
Yeah. And were you able to continue your classes online?
No. My school said that since I wasn't in Spain, I couldn't keep doing the class, even though the classes were online. Because I wasn't in Spain, I wasn't allowed to continue my classes through Santiago, um, which I don't know, that might have been for the best, because I know by the time I left, it was a class of 6, and then I left and 2 other girls left. So it was a class of 3.
Mm.
So I don't know if they continued the studies for everyone else or if they just stopped completely. Um, but
So everything came to a very abrupt end for you.
yes.
Yeah, that's difficult. How has it been explaining your experience to your family and friends, Renee?
Um, I mean, I've been trying to like keep my family up to date as to like what my plans were and where what was going to go on from there. And I mean, they've been very supportive of my all my decisions. My friends kept like asking me when I was going to be back, and kind of expecting me to be back right as soon as like all of that started. But I mean, they're fine. But yeah, I mean, just making sure everyone is up to date on, especially like at the beginning of everything, where everything was so uncertain, like
Yeah.
no one knew what was going to happen next.
Yeah, it's quite difficult to plan when everything that it hinges on is unknown and unpredictable, and it makes it very challenging. But it sounds like you had really good support, and that's one thing that helps our students be successful is the support of their family and friends. So I'm glad that that was there for you. How about you, Lauren? What was it like explaining your experience to family and friends?
Um, Difficult at some points, because for the first month or so of being back, I was just sad that I was back.
Mm-hmm.
So they were like pushing me for details, and I was like, I'm not quite ready to touch the Spain box yet.
Yeah.
And so that was difficult, and it was difficult trying to explain why the abruptness was such an issue, because it was abrupt for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But after I sat my dad down, and I was like, this is the problem and this is why I'm so upset. And then after that it was fine, and he like was a lot more understanding of why the choices that I made, while they were the best, also like hurt me a lot.
Yeah. Would you say that you were having maybe reverse culture shock when you got back?
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
It was very strange because I realized that I'd spent like 6 months in Spain speaking Spanish. And then I got
Mm-hmm.
home and I haven't spoken Spanish to like a real life human being since I've been back.
Yeah.
So it was strange to go back to like living at my dad's house and always speaking English when I had all of these things I wanted to talk about, but I wanted to talk about them in Spanish to like
Right.
get me
Were you
going.
still having dreams in Spanish? And
Sometimes I
your
like
brain
wake
was probably going, wait a minute, what just happened?
Yeah, like I would say something and I'd be like, that's not what I wanted to say. And I'm like, I know how to say it in Spanish, it was very cool to realize how much I had learned, but also
Yeah.
frustrating that I couldn't prove it to anyone because nobody in my family speaks Spanish.
Mm-hmm. So, Lauren, what would you say is the most significant thing that you've learned about yourself during your study abroad experience?
Um, I think that I am a lot more capable like, I'm a very independent human being before, but after getting to Spain and going there alone without any friends, I realized that like I am more capable of doing whatever I want, because even with a language barrier, I figured it out. Um, so like I don't know, that's probably what I learned the most, is that I can do it. I just have to like apply myself. And my studies for the first week or two were hard because it was
Mm-hmm.
like the adjustment and trying to figure everything out. And then once I realized like you just have to try, it was
Mm-hmm.
fine.
Yeah, where there's a will, there's a way. It's amazing what your spirit can do and how empowered you can become when you really want something.
And once I figured out that like I actually wanted to learn how to speak Spanish, I
Mm-hmm.
was like, nobody's gonna stop me. And it's very cool to feel like the world is at your fingertips. And that's how it felt in Spain.
Amazing. How about you, Renee? What's the most significant thing you've learned about yourself during your study abroad experience?
Um, I would say probably just um, that I'm able to get out of my comfort zone, and it's not such a like nerve-wracking thing. I deal with like a lot of like social anxiety, so for me, that was like one of the a big issue is like just being nervous about like putting myself out there, like talking to people, making new connections, exploring situations that I probably normally wouldn't just freely go into. Um, so I worked a lot on that, is just like getting out of my comfort zone, basically. At the beginning of the semester, I spoke with um, one of my psychology professors, and she recommended like this amazing psychologist here in Monterrey, and she's been helping me ever since. And basically, that's like one of the biggest things that we're working on, is just getting out of my comfort zone, because it's really easy to just stay in a place where you're comfortable and feel safe, but you can't. It's not living life, basically.
Right. You don't want to social distance to the extent where you're emotionally and physically cut off from everything. So it has its limits. Yeah. Well, you guys, I think, have developed like superhero powers. You survived a pandemic in another country, in another culture, outside of your comfort zone. And I think, you've come out of this even stronger and better. So I know there's more major things for you to accomplish in your lives, more to come for sure. Was there anything else besides, this might sound like a strange question, but besides the pandemic, besides COVID-19 that was unique about your study abroad? Anything else in that place and time that happened? Any other current events? Did you have a birthday? I don't know, any other life events that happened during your study abroad that navigated and came through? I mean, I think the pandemic was enough, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity to share.
No, I wouldn't say any like significant events happened, but there's I mean, Monterrey is such an active city that like there's always so much going on that I really loved about the city. A lot happens here.
Mm-hmm.
That was my favorite thing. Yeah, one of my favorite experiences was being able to like help out at a fashion show. at, yeah, so I was in a fashion course. It was like basically like sociology of contemporary fashion. But my university like hosted a fashion show at the Museum of Contemporary Art here, and
Okay.
that was like a really cool experience. It was amazing to like actually put up
Mm.
something like that. So that
That's a
was
different cultural experience for sure.
my
Great. How
first.
about you, Lauren?
Um, I don't know. I guess there were the protests in Catalonia,
Mm.
and it was cool hearing about them from like a Spanish native.
Yeah, so tell us, what were the protests about?
So they were protesting because they want to separate from Spain
Mhm.
and get rid of the king. That's a big part of it. And one of my professors was very pro keeping the monarchy as the figurehead of Spain, like keeping them while they don't do much. It's nice to
Mhm.
have that unity. But I also had professors that were like, it'd be better if Galicia was its own thing, and maybe
Mhm.
we shouldn't all be under the same law. So hearing both sides, and we often in class would read. There were some very large like protests going on. We would read from
Mhm.
both sides so that we could see what was going on and what Spanish protesters and Spanish like nationalists thought.
Yeah, those are very significant times in that country's history that you can say you were a part of. For
Yeah.
sure. So, are there any ways that you feel like you've changed, that you're a bit different, or is most everything the same for you? What's life been like, I guess, for you?
I guess my biggest change, I've started working again over the summer, and my biggest change is being more aware of people that don't speak English as a first language.
Mhm.
Um, because before, like, I'd be like, oh, yeah, they don't speak English. But now I understand, like, the fear that comes with being talked to in a language that isn't your own.
Yeah, you have some compassion for that now, some empathy.
I have a lot of empathy. Like, if I say something really fast and I, like, can see in their eyes that it's too fast, I, like, consciously slow down and I think, remember how
Mhm.
it felt when people spoke to you and you were just like, I don't know.
Yeah,
So
that's
that's a
great.
really interesting change.
A good life skill. How
Yeah.
about you, Renee?
Um, yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, just kind of getting out of my comfort zone. I've been doing a really good
Mm-hmm.
job of doing that, taking opportunities, every opportunity that I can to like expose myself, and then just having a much deeper like cultural understanding of Mexico. Um, that's something that has changed me, I'm sure, in ways that I'm probably not even aware of. Um, but I'm very grateful for just having like a deeper exposure to the culture, for sure.
Yeah, I like that phrase that you touched on, that there's probably a lot of things that you don't even realize yet that you're different or has changed you, because the experience, it just comes at you so fast and furious, and all of your five senses are attacked at one time, like drinking from a fire hose. Everything you see, touch, hear, taste, feel is different. And you have to compartmentalize that somehow in your brain. And some of those things there is a compartment for, and it goes right there and you understand it. And other things sort of float around for a while until they find a place to land. And so I remember a student coming back from her study abroad and us visiting about it. And she said, I think this is an experience that I'm going to continue to unpack for many years. So now that you've been launched into the world and are a global citizen, tell me what's next for you, Lauren?
I don't know yet. Right now, so I'm a Spanish major. I'm doing Spanish and psych, and right now I'm thinking I might try and go into an education field. I know Topeka has a dual language school, and so I'm hoping in the fall to be able to like go and visit and see how that works, because I've never been to one. But there's a lot of question marks that I'm hoping the next year, after I've had time to unpack what happened in Spain, I can figure it out.
Right. Well, that sounds like a great plan. It sounds like you've developed a lot of language skills and a lot of empathy to be able to work with that sort of student population. So I wish you luck with that. How about you, Renee? What's next for you?
So I'm still in the planning, I guess, process, but hopefully next semester. I was originally going to do my internship here over the summer, but that got canceled. So I'm hoping that by fall they will open that back up again. So I'll do like my clinical internship here, and it's at a hospital, with cancer patients, I'm pretty sure. So that's something that I really look forward to if it happens. I think just being culturally aware. I mean, just from the research shows that just someone, and I consider myself like not only bilingual but bicultural, and those are distinct things. And ideally, you want to be orientated equally towards both cultures. That's the ideal. So I'm still kind of working towards that, and just understanding the culture and being able to work with people. Hopefully in the future, I'll want to focus on working with like a Hispanic population. So I think just having that understanding is absolutely vital to being able to effectively work with that population.
Well, that sounds like an amazing journey for you. I know you've gotten a lot deeper into the culture and into yourself as well while you've been there. So I think you're on a great path. Excellent. Well, you guys have done amazing things on top of challenges in very unpredictable times. And I know your futures are bright. We're going to sign off on 3 with the Go Bods. 1, 2, 3.
Go.
Go Bods.
No.